Welcome to Property Quorum. Now, as some of you may notice, we're not quite a complete awesome threesome, but Juliet at the moment is waiting outside ports, being very busy. She's usually flying around like a kite. Hopefully, at some point, she may well pop in. If she does, we welcome her with both arms. But what we do have today is Hamish McClay of Surgic and Ray, Chris Gilson, of course, of Root Home, and friend of the show and excellent person, Wendy Gibson of the First Time Buyers Club. Now, we often at Property Quorum talk about all the things that are moving and shaking with regards to often changes in law and also circumstance within the property market. Today is no exception. The LHA rates are frozen while rents rise. What happens next? Of course, to start us off, as is traditional, Hamish McClay.
What I find sort of interesting about the conversations we have is that each of us come from very often different sort of backgrounds within the world of sort of property. And within that, we tend to have a conversation. Chris tends to be, the majority of the time, very upbeat. And he sees opportunity when we speak about conversations, particularly to do with within our property quorum. Juliet looks at the punitive measures that are being enforced upon people. And I haven't a clue about much of what goes on, but sort of put a few bits and pieces in sort of here and there. Now, we're fortunate today, we don't have Juliet in that respect to speak about the punitive measures. I think we can understand those. But we've got Wendy, who is actually sort of looking there for a tremendous background and experience within housing generally, not just her the First Time Buyers Club, but also the work she has done in the past to do with social housing. So we've got a nice little mixture today. So are they punitive measures? Are they seen as an opportunity? Or are we seeing a government yet again, which whilst it's reaching out, trying to help people with housing, also has the other hand running across the top, which is creaming back at the same time, and therefore basically creating a nil type of another type of void, almost like a sort of black hole in a way, in the terms of what's going on in housing.
Wow. Well, I think I'm going to throw straight Chris under the bus. What do you think, Chris?
Well, in general.
No, that could take some time. No, I mean in particular.
I think it's quite remarkable that the government that's meant to be representing the people and is all of full of socialist aims is choosing not to represent the people by freezing their housing and then widening the gap between their ability to compete with the people in the private rental sector. So it's quite astonishing, really. It does create quite a problem and quite a knock on. There are not just the people who are renting in that sector, but there are also organisations. I mean, similar. We will be impacted by these freezes as well in our ability to deliver properties. So all of our projects that are in the social housing sphere, there is still an element of commercial gearing there, in that I need to be able to go and acquire stock competitively on the markets. Now, if those rates are frozen, it means that the repayment levels that I can recoup out of a project over the lifespan of that project are not as achievable. So it means that I'm less competitive in the markets because I can't offer as much as other people can offer for the properties that we're bidding on. So it means that I'm bringing less property to the market just from this rent freeze. And I'm only one small microcosm of the market, but if you multiply that out across all the other different developers doing what we're doing, it has another knock-on effect and in terms of the access to properties and us bringing properties forwards. And yeah, it doesn't really help anyone to have these freezes. So it's a very, very challenging position that they're putting bring the markets in, and it's one more step towards restricting supply.
So you see this as distinctly unhelpful and frankly astonishing, yes?
It's very unhelpful, yeah, and the people that it impacts the most are the people who need it the most. So it's that's why I find it quite astonishing that a Labour government of all governments of all ilks would choose to punish the people that it's meant to be representing the most,
and punishing the people least able to pay such things. It seems to me, Wendy, astonishing as Chris says, unhelpful.
It's incredibly unhelpful, unsurprising though, because clearly the government is trying to cut costs and reduce the amount of income going out of their purses. So Chris has done a really good job explaining from the supply side of things why it's unhelpful, because it limits the ability for people to actually invest in properties that are going to be rented to people who are on housing benefits. From a supply side, just to give you an idea, for those who have no idea how local housing allowances are actually set, what they do is they collectively take all the rents in the market and they line them up from the cheapest to the most expensive. And where the 30%, the 30th most cheapest one sits, that's where they historically used to set the local housing allowance rate. So that meant that people who were looking to rent homes and were on housing benefits at least had access to the cheapest 30% of the market. But by freezing rates, it doesn't mean that market rents stay the same. Market rents continue to increase. It's the housing allowance that gets frozen, which means fewer and fewer properties are then affordable for somebody who is claiming this allowance. And in some areas, I've actually heard that something like only 2% of properties are therefore affordable by people who are on housing benefits. So how's this really helping those who are looking for homes to move into?
I'm struggling to find a way, but there must be one, surely, Wendy. The government wouldn't be doing things to effectively attack the poorest of the nation and limit the ability of people to find housing, would it?
I think what this is doing is it's certainly stopping anyone who is living in a property where the allowances that they're receiving are being, well, the gap between the allowance they're receiving and the market rent is going up and up and up. And some people might be surprised, but actually, in most cases, most private landlords don't systematically increase rents on an annual basis. They tend to let things drift a little bit, partly because if they've got really good tenants, they want them to stay. So they would usually, if they did increase their rents, they would usually do so below market value. So over time, the gap between market rent and what a tenant is paying actually does get bigger and bigger. So this can create a massive shock to somebody who's then forced to move out of their home because for no reason of their own, maybe the landlord has got to a position where it's no longer financially viable for them to own the property, or they want to move back into it, or the property needs some significant work doing to it to bring it back up to a decent livable standard. So that means the tenant has to leave, but then they can't because the rents that are being offered are vastly different to what they can afford to pay because the housing allowance is now ineffective in the area that they live in.
Well, we've had a couple of comments. This person here says, nice explanation, Wendy. Thank you very much for that. And cool, after your last comment, thank you so much. Hamish, it seems to me that these are measures that have not been thought through.
I'm not so well, yes, they will have been thought through because if you like, each government that we have is supported by civil servants, and it's not just the various ministers, the members of parliament who are making decisions. They are influenced as well quite significantly in many cases. Some might say far too much by the civil servants behind it. So it's a combination of things. And unfortunately, we do not live in straightforward times in that sort of one particular sort of step can encourage a move that is intended. And I don't know quite what the intention is. I mean, Wendy quite rightly pointed out, hey, look, this government are, I'm going to say, attempting in some ways not to be spending as much money, yet they open up the doors, for example. Not, I'm not making comparisons. I do actually sort of feel that children are a life choice. People don't have to have children. It is their choice to have the children. And therefore, economically, if they're not able to support those children, it's a bit unfair on those who don't have children, expecting them to support them. So it's a lifestyle choice. So here we have a situation. We're opening up the door and saying, look, have as many children as you like. We'll just give you more and more money. However, we're not going to support you to rent the property to house those children in, because the more children you have, the larger the property, the larger the rent. And as Wendy has so eloquently explained to us, that 30%, which has been reduced anyway, because we've held that. I remember the last time, and Chris was saying the last time we had, when it was opened up and the LHA was increased, what a great opportunity it was. Now here we've got exactly the opposite sort of going on. Is this not another sort of nail in the coffin of that occasional landlord who turns around and says, well, actually, hang on now, we do really want to be helping the housing situation, but we can't afford to keep giving, because we've been giving already. We've reduced our profitability over time because the poor old landlord has been battered. For the last 10, 15 years, the landlord's been battered. Is this not another situation which is going to let people turn around? And particularly that younger one says, crikey, I'm going to flog the house. I'm going to get the heck out to Dubai. The far better opportunity over there. So it really is not, it's not achieving anything. I think this is the big challenge, because we had a government that sort of moved in and everybody was thinking that's absolutely great. Let's do something about the housing market. Let's improve, let's make availability, create availability. Yet so many steps are, like I was sort of saying, they're pulling back. They're pulling back on the opportunities arising, the number of houses that are available. They might unload. I mean, we know there's a shortage of build that was created by various causes this particular sort of year. So it's not exactly helping. I don't know that I answered your question, to be quite honest.
Chris, so apparently the floodgates are open. Everyone's going to have loads of children, but apparently no help with the extra space required.
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed it many times on this show, and the government actually has all the cards in terms of being able to resolve the situation.
Right.
That they have access to huge land banks through the planning portals, knowing exactly what the next 10, 20 years worth of land allocations are, where all the properties are that could be built, everything that's been brought forwards. They already have great relationships with huge house builders throughout the country. They if they wished to, and they do this when they want to, they will turn on the printing press and print some money, or they'll, what they call, is borrow the money from the Bank of England. But they will go and do it when it suits them. So they could quite easily solve the housing crisis in the 5-year window, still within the 5-year window for this Parliament that they've set for themselves. Now, I don't see any sign of them doing that, and it does boil down to asking the question why, because I'm not sure why they're not looking to really genuinely resolve it and create positive change for the people of this country. And that shows through in some of the policies that they're enacting. For example, Hamish mentioned people going to Dubai for a better life, and I'm aware of that. I have peers around me who are doing exactly that right now. They are fleeing this country based on the policies that are being enacted and the almost authoritarianism that's coming in, which is just, it almost mirrors the Soviet state, how ludicrous the state is becoming. And the policies that the current politicians are mooting to try and stop that happening are not, well, let's change things and improve things and make Britain a great place to do business. Their mentality is, oh, let's put a tax on people to entrap them so they can't go and steal their cash that way. That makes no sense to me. That is not, taxing people into oblivion is not going to grow this country. So they really need to give their head a wobble. They have everything at their fingertips to be able to grow Britain into a great place once again. They're choosing not to, and that baffles me, and it frustrates me.
I bet it does. Wendy, Comrade Wendy, apparently, apparently, the government needs to have its head wobbled. Do you think we are turning into an authoritarian state bit by bit? And as Chris said, it's not just the rich that are fleeing this country; it's everyone.
I don't really know enough about politics, I think, to be able to make comment about that. But the one thing I do want to make comment on is the fact that this government, they put their flag to the mast, whatever the saying is, about making sure and focusing on economic growth within the country. And where's this economic growth that they're talking about?
Yeah, so I'm a bit bemused by that myself, actually.
There's no appearance whatsoever of any measures that have been put in place to actually help try and build the economy up and to encourage business. If anything, all the taxes, all the measures that have been put in place are exactly as Chris said, it's stick wielding rather than actually creating carrots to attract people to invest in the UK, and also for people in the UK to invest in the UK and to help build and grow the economy. And yes, I know that one of the things that they've put measures in place to do and are in the process of doing is trying to reduce the time it takes to get planning approvals on for new builds. But that's only one of the bottlenecks in the whole process. There are so many others, including on the other end, supporting people to actually buy these homes, because if there's nobody there to buy these homes, the builders, in spite of the fact that they might have planning for a 10, even 15-year supply, they're not going to build them if they haven't actually got the demand so that they can be guaranteed that they're going to sell them. So yes, whilst measures have been made to try and improve planning, it doesn't necessarily mean and guarantee that homes are going to be built.
Wow. Okay. Hamish, would you care to take us home, please?
Right. Well, part way home, because I don't see that we're actually going to be making the situation any the easier for those people, particularly those people that are living in this country who are presently homeless. We have this, every government that actually comes in, and so many councils say we're going to do something about the homeless. And really sad to say, we've got a situation now which are going to put even more pressure on, and they're going to be more landlords having to say to people, I'm sorry, folks, I need to sell the property. You need to leave. And they've still got time to do it, because if you like, many of these sort of things that are coming in, they're going to take time to ensue. They can actually still get a section. They can still get people to actually sort of leave their properties using the section sort of 21s and aspects of that particular nature. They've got till March 31st. I think it's going to be encouraged. It's the wrong time of year as well. It is not very helpful. I just noticed that the rains have descended yet again. So it's a challenge. And I think great thing, because resilience is sort of something that many Brits have, and they certainly need that sort of resilience to keep them sort of on the go. And I do hope we can find the positives in this. They're not evident at the moment. I'm sure there's going to be something somewhere, but we can't actually sort of see it. There's not visibility of it at the moment. And it's a bit of a damning side to the process if the government really do want to make housing much more readily available.
Wow. Land banks ahoy, decisions unmade that should be, and the haves appear to be taking their leave and wandering off to Dubai for a better life. And the have-nots are potentially piling up in the street, being rained upon. It can't continue, surely. Or can it? Well, the next exciting episode of Property Quorum, of course, next week at 10 o'clock on a Thursday. Don't forget that tomorrow is Cladding Matters, 1 o'clock. I think that's going to be a bit of a bun fight as well. Fighting the good fight as we promote getting better housing laws passed and so on, and construction. But it just remains for me to say thank you so much, Chris Gilston of Root Home, bringing sage thought, and Wendy Gibson of the First Time Buyers Club. Excellent explanation. And of course, Hamish McClay not providing for me, as he's supposed to be contractually doing, a chink of light. I was looking for optimism today, Hamish. Not yet in evidence. But I say to all of you, we talk about the topics that I think more people should be talking about. This is an informational show. This is not so much training or teaching, but just to make people up to the ideas that need to be discussed about this topic. Please keep your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the stars. And try and look after your mental health. And stay dry if you can. Thank you for our contributors. Thank you so much. And to all of you watching, thank you. I've seen a big flood of you come in ever since we started transmitting on both vertical and horizontal, like portrait or landscape. Please keep listening. There's much more to come, and I look forward to hearing from you all very soon. Until next week, bye bye.